So then in the next session, you might actually, Andy is a familiar face. You might have seen him earlier on stage, and he was talking about a project that he did that was, well, pretty successful.
Yeah.
But he already talked about that project, so we couldn't cover that. But he's doing it again. He's on a new project. He's just doing it again. So this is his story of how he's doing it again and why it works. All right? Please give a big hand to Andy.
Right. No, thank you, and good morning. And yeah, I'm still adjusting, so if I seem a little tired, you're probably right. Let's see, do I need to? Okay, so I'm here today to talk about the fun I keep having trying to fix legacy applications, improving their performance and reliability using Axon Framework and now Axon Server. I didn't have it before, and now we're using it. A little bit about me. I'm Andy Whitaker. I have my own private company. It's just me, so I can do contract work and consultancy. I've been doing development for now close to 25 years. I worked in defense, aerospace, financial services, and now I've worked for 17 years on and off for the government sector. And I had a co-author for the presentation. He was unable to make it. Wayne Hoskins, he's been 18 years and buried in the state government, and he started off as a customer service representative, and he knew so much about the system, they made him a business analyst, and then he bothered coders so much, they said, why don't you try coding it, and he did, and he's now a senior developer. So you know, he just worked his way up. And the pictures are us surviving the pandemic with our families, because they put up with us a lot. So what I want to cover today is I want to first talk about the legacy app we're working on and why there's problems. And I want to focus on how we determine what to fix first. There's so many issues when you get into this stuff. Where do you start? And why we are trying to push this app from being database-centric to domain-centric and using bounded context and domain-driven design. And how it's always a challenge. I've done this before, and it's been really hard this time. I'm trying to get the team to adopt event-sourced and event-driven techniques. As I said, I've done this before, and this has been a real challenge. And so I want to kind of talk about how we're moving through that, and also the lessons learned. So to back up a little bit, the application we're doing is called Uplink. It's the unemployment insurance program for the state of Indiana. It's managed by an agency called Department of Workforce Development. It services 200,000 claimants on a good year, getting their benefits, getting paid, and 145,000 employers have to go and get their taxes paid, doing reporting. So it's a big system. It gets a lot of attention from the press, from the government. During the pandemic, it swelled to 1.3 million claimants because they decided that was the best way to get money to people during the pandemic. And so there were a lot of challenges with a system like this, changing it on a dime. Uplink started in 2005, and it went live 9 years later, and it's been continuously developed since then, and it's about 2 million lines of code. As far as we know, it's the only fully integrated unemployment insurance application in the United States. It's a big system, and it's got its own headaches. So to go through my talk, I want to kind of talk about why it's such a problem. So Uplink is divided into like 6 business domains. Each domain is a separately deployable web application. And the green ones are public facing. You have client CSS is the claimant self-service, and the blue boxes are all internal for state workers to use. And so like the benefits blue box is there to help claimants. This is where the customer service reps work. We have the same thing for employers. You have a tax system for internal state workers and an employer self-service. The one at the top, appeals, is for judges to resolve disputes. So when people don't get paid, they file appeals. All that's handled in the system. They send out notices for hearings. They conduct hearings in the application, make decisions. Everything is all integrated. And then this last one over here is basically the problem child, IWF. It's the imaging and workflow component. It's the smallest one, but it provides workflow and document management for the entire system. The technology, since it started in 2005, as you can imagine, it was basically started in Java 1.4, deploys to WebSphere. Spring 2.0, all XML based, Oracle 10.2. 17 years later, we've managed to get to Java 1.8. We're going to be at Webster 9 by the end of the year, and Oracle 19c hopefully by the end of the year. To get this far, the team's had to do multiple tech upgrades over the years. It's really hard to upgrade something like this, as you all can imagine. And it's when we say upgrade, it's really not an upgrade. It's basically get it working to meet compliance, get the licensing done. We still have XML configuration all over the place. We have mixtures of stuff. And the team has a hard time feeling, because they feel like they can never catch up. You never work on anything new or exciting, and you feel like you're losing your skill sets. So I'm going to flip through this pretty fast, but another problem we have with Uplink, as you can imagine, it's being so big, it has lots of integrations. So the ones I'm concerned with today are IBM FileNet, which does our document management and our workflow, and what's called Smart Communications, which is our document generation. Having all this old stack and trying to integrate with things, you're constrained by what you can do. And we have other integrations. We have MuleSoft to integrate with outside agencies. Some agencies want SOAP, some want REST, and some are just custom file transfers. All this is in play while we're trying to keep the system running, respond to changes, and that you're just stuck. So the team that does all this is 22 developers, and it's a mixture of state employees and contractors. They're tied to their functional domains. So we have a benefits team and a tax team, and they become very specialized within that domain. They don't want to go and try new things. You don't want to learn new things. And over 17 years, as you can imagine, you have a lot of turnover, but you have several people that leave and come back, and I'm one of them. I'm a culprit. I started there in 2006, trying to fix bugs and help them get going and meet their go live. And so I'm culpable. I was part of this mess. And the team, because of all this that happens, you build habits. And I think that's part of the challenge I've faced with this, is that people have a lot of habits. The developers have habits, and it's hard to change those. When push comes to shove, you stick to your habits. So during the pandemic, it was, I wasn't there during the majority of it, but I heard it was very eventful and very hard. And they moved mountains, working lots of overtime and stuff. But the businesses realized that mountain is just too big anymore. And so how do you fix it? And so there were a few more challenges. I'll go through these pretty fast. But being a government application, the rules are all encoded in law. So the lawmakers don't care about your technology. They don't care. They care about their constituents. And so policies change a lot. New laws come in. They have special sessions. During the pandemic, they decided you're going to do this come hell or high water. You're going to pay these people on this date. And so that kind of culture, your business, the agency itself gets pulled in different directions. The team is constantly being reprioritized, and you're constantly taking shortcuts just to make things work. So, and of course, you get deadlines before you know requirements, and all this boils down to bad testing. Testing is very hard. Things slip through, things crash, problems happen. So, and the one big part of being fully integrated, everything gets deployed together. So you have along the way, your team loses trust in themselves to change anything because they know they might change something that breaks something else. So, these are all typical problems. Okay, it's just typical stuff. But Uplink gets kind of special. It was built starting with like Oracle forms. Everything was based on Oracle. And over the years, it's grown to like 1,100 tables. All the domains have full CRUD access. And the special thing right here, these blue boxes here in the middle, where's my this is this project called Uplink Common, where everything, you think, well, that's where the security goes, that's where common stuff should belong. Well, that's where a lot of business logic lives, because it became easier for developers to put logic in common to be access to the database, and it gives, versus having good boundaries and good separation of concerns, they become very reliant on just being able to reach down and change what they want to change in the database. And so if you talk to developers, they say, I don't want to work on appeals, I'm a benefits person, but they have no hesitation in actually changing the appeals logic to fix their bug, and may not tell the appeals team that they're doing this. And so you end up with a lot of data integrity issues, and I don't want to stand in front of my screen, but you end up with a lot of what we call database change requests, right? So I did a count. We do about 1,000 a year of changing data about 3 times a day, almost, to fix problems because of these lack of boundaries. We don't have good bounded content. We call them domains, but they're really not domains. They're just, there's a mixture of code. We're up to almost 400 right now, DCRs this year. So the team knows this. They're smart people. They know there's problems. And prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic, they started experimenting with domain-driven design and trying to draw those bounded contexts and trying to make things better. And they found that the code that they wrote using domain-driven design was a lot easier to understand, a lot easier to test. So, yay, they're making some progress. Problem is you have these little fiefdoms, as you can imagine, in the teams. Even though it's a small team, 22 people, you still have fiefdoms. And you had a hard time getting the team to adopt domain-driven design in a consistent way. There was they argued about what a bounded context was. They argued what's an event, what are these things, and it got a lot of pushback. Didn't make a lot of progress, but they did start. They all agreed they need to start persisting events and trying to keep track of using events as historical records. And they picked important ones like when people logged in and when passwords changed. But Uplink doesn't react to events. There's no react. It's just an audit trail. But the business has started to stress the need for this. So just recently, we had a security breach, and it's not fun. It made the news. I could talk about it because now it's in the news. It's the first one we've had, and it was a vulnerability in CSS. And we used the events that were stored to track down what happened. And when the business did that, they realized, oh, we need more of these things. We need more of this. And I was in a meeting, and one of the managers said, Andy, that Axon stuff you're working on, isn't that doing this stuff for you already? And I said, yes, that's what we're doing. So there was a silver lining to a security breach, but it was it is what it is. So in 2020, I had been working at FSA, it was another agency, for a couple years, and I discovered Axon there. And my team there adopted it really fast. They really liked it, and we rewrote an entire application and built a new one in 2 years, in a span of 2 years, and it was very successful. We didn't have Axon Server. We used Mongo as our event store. It's another story, but it really worked. And so DWD in late 2020, they invited me to come back and do the same thing. They said, come here and do what you did there with Uplink. Okay. And I'm always an optimist. I'm always an optimist. And the first thing we asked was, why don't we just start rewriting Uplink? And there's so much codified rules over the years, you can't rewrite something like this very easily. And you have to keep the lights on. You have to handle all these new requests from the business. If there's policy changes, you have to keep going. And so my idea is and Wayne and some of the other team members, we decided, let's just train the team. Let's make them smarter. Let's take on some small things. We'll strangle stuff, and we'll build some cloud-ready services. Nothing we have is in the cloud, but also being a fanatic, I stood up Kubernetes, and we deployed onto our on-prem Kubernetes, our new stuff. And that's been going well. But that's the idea. We'll just be smarter, and we'll get better, and everybody will adopt it, and it'll be joy. And it's not been joy. And we decided, where do you start? Now, here's where we started figuring out. It's a big application. Where do you tackle? What do you we got this new technology we want to use. We have teams that have these little fiefdoms, and we have a lot of problems. So where do you start? And we looked at IWF, the imaging workflow, because it has the smallest business domain. Is one of the reasons. So if we wanted to take something apart, it'd be easy to start there. And unfortunately, it's the linchpin that everything revolves around, which I'm going to skip this for a second. well, maybe I won't. But one of the problems they have is reliability of Uplink. It goes down a lot. It has trouble being deployed. And usually if the Oracle's down, of course, you're dead in the water because everything's tied to one big database. I want to take out, the team wants to get rid of Oracle or split it apart, but that's not happening for a while. But our other resiliency issue we have, or reliability, is on IWF. Everything, we started looking at this, everything depends on it, and it makes, every app that comes up makes connections to it right away when they come up, and if Uplink is not available, they don't start. Kind of like a poor man's health check, nowadays. But this always been like this. And IWF usually comes up, but it has a dependency on FileNet. And if it can't make a connection to FileNet when it comes up, which you'd think would be, it's always there, but it's not. We have issues, IWF will go down, which brings down everything. And we've had issues where domain controllers, in the middle of the day, someone touches them in IT. We've had stuff just go down. FileNet goes down, disappears, and everything just collapses. Not fun. So we thought, okay, IWF is the linchpin. It's part of a problem there. What else is wrong with IWF? Well, IWF is responsible for all the notice generation, all the workflows, and like every big system like this, we have batch jobs, right? And the batch jobs have to be scheduled at night because they are very tight. They take a lot of performance. They take a performance hit. So we use message buses. IWF processes things. We do a couple 100,000 notices a month, and it just depends on when things run. You might not have a performance problem, but at the same time, during the day, workers are trying to use IWF, and if there's a load on it at all, and what we've discovered isn't have to be much of a load to cause a problem. And because everything's transactional, you end up with domain starting transactions on the database. You end up they make calls. IWF starts transactions on the database at the same time as trying to do work with FileNet and Thunderhead. And a lot of times, this is one of the reasons we have these DCRs, is something goes wrong. And it could be an error, it could be whatever. Sometimes the transactions roll back, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you end up with bad data. And so you end up with DCRs. So, okay, that's a problem we have there. And we've talked to the users, and they say they're very accustomed to basically waiting till the next day for something to show up because they rely on somebody will come fix it. It failed, I'll go check it the next day. And this is supposed to be timely stuff. You have people that need to get their benefits, and you have a clock ticking. So there's a big problem with this, and they've just gotten used to it. There's all these workarounds to fix. Instead of fixing the root problems, there's all these workarounds. And let me back up. So we said, okay, we're going to fix IWF. So okay, that's where we're going to start. But what use case are we going to start with? So then we thought, well, where do we start within IWF? Where do we start applying Axon and event-driven stuff? And the pandemic gave us the answer. Because I was there in late 2020. Before the pandemic, if a claimant wanted to get information back to the system that, hey, I want to keep my benefits, what usually happens is to prevent fraud, a notice is sent to somebody, and they have to fill out a bunch of paperwork, submit like their driver's license, submit a bunch of stuff. And here in 2019, the only way to get it in was to either drop it off physically, mail it in, or fax it in. There was no way to go into the system and upload something. And it was always known that claimants wanted that, but it was always on the back burner because they had a system in place where some of them come in through the mail, it would get scanned in, and they had workers that would capture it and get into IWF. IWF goes to FileNet, and then you have adjudicators that can look at it and determine if somebody gets their benefits. It's been working fine for a decade and stuff, so why change it? Well, the pandemic happened, and it overwhelmed the system. 1.3 million people trying to get benefits through mail and through fax machines. And so the governor, it caught attention of a lot of people, and they said, fix this. I wasn't there yet. They told the team, fix this today. And the solution they came up with was there was another group in the agency that had an upload function in their app. They said, why don't we just use that? And so a claimant, when they went to the self-service portal, they would click a link to upload documents, and it would redirect them to log into another system that they didn't know what it was, but they had to create credentials and go in, fill out a form and upload their documents, and it would get attached as an email to an adjudication mailbox, where hopefully an adjudicator could find it along the 1.3 million emails coming in. That didn't work. There was a lot of problems, and eventually people were complaining that I'm not getting my benefits. I've submitted everything twice. I've done this over and over again. And finally they said, just pay everybody. Just pay everybody, including fraudsters. Pay everybody. So then we got, we're trying to clean that up, who's committed the fraud. My team, when I came in, I said, okay, we're going to fix this, and we're going to use a real bound of context, a real system. And my goal was to basically let them come in through CSS, and we have a new bound of context using Axon, called it document management, because we are terrible at naming stuff. And that bound of context would work with IWF to get things into FileNet. And the idea was to take ownership and draw a line that document management would become our sole place for accessing FileNet. Get rid of that problem, because we get to probably handle it better on our microservice. So I worked with 3 developers, and I got them up to speed on Axon by watching YouTube videos. And mostly, we built a chat application, I think it was on there. We used that chat application. I made them do that over and over again and trying to build it in, and writing unit tests. Made them write unit tests. And that was a big change for them, writing tests up front. But it worked. It worked. There's still a lot of misconceptions on the event sourcing, but it worked. And this is what we ended up with, our architecture of it. We have a document management bound in context with 2 microservices in it. One focuses on getting the upload in. It scans for a virus and caches the document. It raises an event for document management. We have another microservice called document management that will query document upload for the information and get it into FileNet. We started with Axon Server SE. This is our first foray with Axon Server. It was my first try with Axon Server. It's hard to buy things for the state. And so, hey, it's free. Why don't you use the free thing? Okay, we'll use the free thing. It works well. It really works. I mean, you guys did a good job. It works really well. And by doing this, we were able to start enforcing domain-driven design. The team I worked with, the 3 developers, they really like it. And we built this in a span of the whole thing in about 4 months. It took about 4 months. People were pulled off on other projects. There's still other stuff going on, but we had this ready to go in about 4 months. The hardest part was integration with Uplink, because all that legacy stuff there's JSP pages and trying to figure out the best way to integrate. We thought about having direct ties with the event bus and the command bus right in Uplink. We thought about just trying to connect directly to Axon Server. We chickened out. We thought we should stick with a little bit with what we have and go that way. And we made very clear that we would own the data. We would draw the lines, and we used the event processor and projections to do updates. We enforced that all queries had to come through the front door. There was no backdooring the system anymore. And because there was only basically 4 of us, it was easy to sell that to ourselves. We did this, and it's worked. We've not had any DCRs with this. We had 1 defect. We went live with this in December, early January, and we had 1 defect. It's worked really well. Let me stand in front of this stuff here, sorry. We did use the Axon sagas to handle asynchronous, asynchronous processing, but to provide the resiliency. We used a sagas kicked off, something was hard to explain to people, but when someone since notices are timely, we used deadlines, and we started a saga when a notice went out. We started a saga that they had a certain amount of time to get something back in, and the saga would end and close their stuff up. And the adjudicators, we put integration into IWF for the adjudicators to use before they would have to search for the documents and stuff. And we changed it a little bit for them. As soon as the notice gets uploaded, it shows up for them in their workflow. And there's a query that goes back to doc management to get the data. And the adjudicators loved it because they could start they could have a conversation with the claimant on the phone. They could say, hey, we need your driver's license still. And they say, okay, I'll upload it. They go and upload it. Within moments, it's there. That was a game changer for the adjudicators. We weren't expecting they like it that much, but they said it's like you can have a conversation with these people, and you feel like you're helping them faster, and they were. So so it's been pretty resilient. We can turn off document management. They can still upload. It's been working pretty well. So cheers all around. It was a good success story. And what we learned from it was, if you can do a greenfield project, that's the best place to start. You know, and because this wasn't really a greenfield project, but it was a small enough use case that it was new, and it was very, very simple to work with. It allowed us to really focus on the fundamentals, and the team, like I said, these 3 developers took to it pretty well, and it was their first time with microservices, and we were able to they were amazed about how they were happy that they didn't have to deal with all the, no one, we had to draw straws to go who had to do the integration. No one wanted to go integrate with the legacy stuff. They all wanted to work on the microservice, and Andy, you go work on the JSP pages and work on that stuff. We don't want to touch it. And what we learned was having Axon there helped them build better habits. It gave them the rails, because it wasn't Andy telling them how to do domain-driven design. It wasn't, that was part of the problem they had adopting domain-driven design was that they didn't want to listen to people. For some reason, it's easier to listen. Oh, this is all written. There's a website I can go to that explains all this stuff, and it's like, okay, the rails are down, and they were able to adopt it pretty fast. And we showed, we all knew it, but we showed the rest of the team about how much faster it was just to work with the microservice technology versus WebSphere, because developers live in hell having to run WebSphere locally to work on their code. It's your best case 3 minutes just to get started on something, and it's tough. So yeah, it was great. And so success is going. What's next? Well, Trains per hour improved, and then we thought, well, I started working with Wayne Hoskins, and we said we got document upload going, but we still have issues with IWF, and because IWF still has to generate documents. So let's tackle notice generation. Let's remove that piece from the system. Let's own it, and let's see, can we make notice generation event driven? And so, okay, we'll give it a shot. And with notices, as I said, they're all timely, and you have all these batch jobs sending large requests, causing performance problems. And so we talked about the performance problems here already, but to make things even more fun, in February, they told us that our system that generates the documents was going to go away. And it's because it used ActiveX for a function. And they said, the state IT team said, we are not supporting IE anymore. It will be off your computers June 15th. Okay. So of course there was panic, and we asked, can we have it longer? No, it'll be gone June 15th. Fix your stuff. So Wayne and I, at the time it was just me and him, we started working on this, and it's like, okay, well, let's do this, and let's just really add ourselves some pain. Let's take a look at all the domain logic that's everywhere. And for generating notices, like I said, this Uplink common has these boundary problems. And so let's fix that too. Let's start moving that around. And let's, back it up here. Yeah, we have this problem here. We have fixed the domain logic, and we have to fix that Thunderhead problem. So our plan was refactor it all, start moving it around, and then using a feature flag. Now, the feature flags, I think, are common practice. It's not at the state. We blew people's minds. That we could turn something on and off on a date, or on a flag. I think developers knew about it, but the business was amazed. They said, well, when are you going to roll this out on June 15th? How are we going to test it? How are we going to manage all this testing and keep working on this stuff? And we said, we'll just turn it on. We want to turn it on. And if there's something goes wrong, we'll just turn it off. it was a mind blower. I don't understand that, but it was. And so the next thing was replace Thunderhead, and so we did Wayne as a miracle worker. He refactored all the domain logic. He basically gave all the domains a consistent API to use because they all had their own implementations for doing notices, and we gave it basically gave it a language that made sense. So we did all that work. I worked on bringing smart communications up, which was a replacement for Thunderhead, so it wasn't a big change. We convinced the state to buy it because they said, you're going to lose all your stuff. You have a clock ticking. Buy this. And so that was actually a pretty easy thing to put in place. But then we decided we were going to create a communications bounded context. And this thing, because notices are a form of communication, was our logic. We're communicating with the claimant, and so emails could go in here, text message. This is the bounded context to communicate with the claimant. And going to use the Axon framework. And this we're also responsible for, I skipped this, notices also get printed and mailed. So our print vendor had, at the same time, I skipped that, they wanted us to switch from using PostScript to PDF. Okay, so we had that to take on as well. So we decided we would build this bounded context to do all this work. And we would rely on the Axon to provide us, once again, the resiliency and reliability to get this done. And so I'm just redrawing it here to show what we ended up doing. So communications would own the data. There's a lot of database tables around notices where people were touching it, and we said no more. But again, the hardest part in all this stuff is drawing the boundaries and getting people to play with it and respect the boundaries. So the communications bounded context would own the data. It would deliver for printing, and because it is event driven, we'll just reuse document management. We'll just raise another event and let it grab the notices that are coming in and get them into FileNet. So we were able to reuse the other bounded context just by passing it in an event. Let's see. So also communication will be able to consume all the batch requests, be responsible for everything, and get that load off of IWF. This was our first pass. We switched at this time to Axon Server E. This was back this year with the success of doc upload. We convinced the business that we were going on the right path. And I am so sorry, my apologies to the Axon team, because it was really hard to work through that procurement. I don't understand it, but thank you guys for sticking to it because it really helped me out. So we switched to Axon Server E because we were able to use multiple bounded contexts and have some replication and some multiple nodes. And we had the GUI to be able to scale up the thread pools and stuff. And we started looking at the pool processors at that time. We've been doc upload used tracking event processors, and this time we wanted to look at the pool processors. The hardest part, again, was the refactoring of Uplink. Wayne was amazed. I went through the same kind of training exercise with him, and he was amazed that we built the notices microservice in a couple weeks. We had it built. We did the event flow. We figured out through event storming, and it was very fast. And so we thought, oh, we're winning. We're winning. We got document management. We added event flow for notices. It was very similar to doc upload, so it was easy to put in. And then, so the basic flow is the request comes in, the notices microservice calls smart communications to get it, saves that content in a cache, and then until document management stores it. And if it needs to be printed, there's a saga involved that basically coordinates printing it and making sure it's stored in document management before the cache is deleted. So there's some rules in place to keep things moving fine. And the hardest part was the data ownership in this case. We had to convince the DBAs to lock it down. We said we want a new user on Oracle. We can't take out the schema, but we want permissions only for us to touch this. And we kind of lost the fight. They said, actually we didn't. We left the main uplink domains the ability to read from the query to this whole query because we couldn't fix all that stuff at first, but we own the data now. And that has helped a lot. That ownership, drawing boundaries, fixes things. And so we were getting close to our deadline. Beginning of June, we started testing it, and we had a problem. We had a performance problem with real-time use cases. We started running batch jobs during testing. We started, let's just run batch jobs and try seeing how the app system works. The testers couldn't preview their notice. There's use cases where they try to preview a notice and they can edit it, and that was taking 30 seconds to a minute to load up when we were running batches through. And so we're not supposed to run batch jobs during the day anyway, but if there's any type of a load, we don't know how it's going to respond. So how we fix this? And we had a couple weeks left. And it's like, and Wayne looks at me and he's like, what are we going to do? I was like, I don't know. But we thought about it, and this goes back to what Aller talked about yesterday about location transparency. What we did, these are Spring Boot apps. And what we did is we just created profiles. We deployed the same code twice, 2 different microservices, one with different profiles. So we created a notice bash microservice that was responsible, that was responsible for doing all the heavy work in the back end. And the original notice microservice was for the users to experience. That way, the only thing going through the notice microservice was, I need to preview my notice, I need to see it. They never saw any performance problems with this. The batch microservice would get scaled out separately. It was handling all the requests coming in through the message bus and doing all the printing. It was sending stuff to print because the commands be fired and it'd pick up events. And with the processing groups, we used profiles to control which processing groups were available. And the notice batch microservice just does all the work. But we have another one that is not scaled as high for real-time requests from the users. And that solved that problem, and it's like high fives all around. But then we had one more problem that came up in testing. The clock was getting closer. We had like a week left. And they said, oh, you know what? That's all working really good. But now I'm not getting my notices. I see my notice link, but I open it, it's not there. And it was an eventual consistency problem, which we hadn't had before. Doc Upload didn't have one. But what happened was the user would request a notice, it'd go to communications bound on context, get generated, the notice be cached, and the page, because they would still access the database directly and the response went back immediately, they would see the link immediately that they could open the notice up. And they would try to open it, and then you have a race condition started. Because depending on the load and stuff, document management is trying to get the notice into FileNet, but it's also trying to retrieve it. So what happens is you can open the notice. And fortunately, it was just testers who were unhappy, but if this went in production, we would have been screamed at. And so we talked about, well, how we fix it and stuff. One, do we put a delay in somehow or whatever? And fortunately, the fix was very simple. We tried just decreasing threads, and we tried to scale things out, and that fixed a little bit, but wasn't consistent. So what we ended up doing was just when they request a notice, the notice is cached, and so why don't we just grab the cache? And so if document management is asked to retrieve a notice and it's not available in FileNet, or the aggregate inside document management, it's not stored yet, well, just go ask for it again. And so there's some magic going on behind the scenes. There's an extra hop, but the user always gets their notice. And they were, we went live with this, and no more 1-2 seconds for it to happen. No big transactions anymore to happen. It was immediate, and yeah. So it's been, they open it and they get the work, and it's So this went live. Oh, here it's on in a second. This went live in June 23rd. We missed our deadline for IE by 1 week. We pleaded with the IT team, leave it on the computers until the end of June. And they did. They said, okay, we'll leave it there till the end of June. So we made our deadline. The cutover, some things to know, we cut over from Axon Server SE to Axon Server E. It was very painless. The cutover was fine. We are now able to run batch jobs during business hours for notice generation. They're not brave enough to try it. We've had some special jobs run in August, and I was called by the DBA saying, Andy, they're going to run a 15,000 notice job here, today. And I was like, oh, okay, go ahead. And we want you to know about it. Okay, go ahead. And that no one's noticed. It just runs. I told the DBA, we ran 130,000 through on a Friday. No one cared. And he's like, are you serious? Yeah. We were able to run stuff now during the day, which is going to be a game changer for the business. We no more scheduling things at night. I hope, it's still working its way through the system that we can do this now. We were able to, using the event processors, we had to replay the events once. In July, we realized we weren't capturing enough data to help us track stuff with the caching and things. And so we switched those pooling processors, and they're wicked fast. So good job, guys. I don't have a lot of comparisons. I know that we replayed events back at FSSA. We had like 20 million events to play back at the time, and it took a while. it took a while. We processed with what we did here. We had 3.5 million by the end of July, and it did it in 20 minutes and rebuilt our database for us. So I've been pretty happy with it. We had an emergency in September. Beginning of September, one of these special jobs they did, it was messed up, and they said, we stopped the printing, but we need to get them out of the system. We have like 1,200 notices. We got to get them out. We need to run DCRs. What's your table structure like? We need to do some DCRs, delete it. And we said, no, we're not going to do DCR. We're going to add a delete notice flow. And we got commands, events. Wayne and I found out about it at lunchtime. By the end of the day, we had it tested and ready to go. We were able to deploy it the next morning in production. No one was the wiser, and we were able to delete our notices. What's funny is we've gotten some defects on things that were always broken, and because we went through and we fixed the domain logic and drew boundaries, those things are fixed now. And we've gotten defects on the things we fixed, and because the users were like, this doesn't work right anymore. And it's like, it was always broke. You guys were just used to having it be broke. So that's been an interesting one. And on August and September, we've been trying to bring more team members onto it and trying to get them to adopt this stuff. It's been, we have 22 developers. It's been a challenge. I kind of glossed over something. We had a side project in the middle there. We were making progress with doc upload, and we tried, okay, let's go and look at the benefits domain and try to do something with payments. Payments is a big thing. And let's try to do the event flows there. And it was really hard. And we scrapped it after a couple months of working on the site, trying to get it going, because it was hard to get that team to I don't really know the problem, how to solve the problem yet, but it was really hard. A lot of pushback, a lot of misunderstandings, try to do the same kind of training, try to do the same kind of things, just not working. It goes back to something that Allard said yesterday about being people want to be continuous learners, and I wonder if that's part of the problem. Maybe people have their habits; they don't want to learn something new. I don't know, but we'd have been able to get a few more team members to work on some enhancements and integrations with Uplink, and try to, instead of backdooring doc management, you still have those backdoors. They can read the queries. Trying to get them to use the front door. So we've got some people going through and trying to work with it. We have not had a single DCR, and we will not have one. I refuse to have a DCR. And 3 months later, we still have IE on all our computers. It has not removed it yet. So the deadline that was set for us, and I mean, we were having, I was in several meetings pleading with them to let it stay on our computers till June. They kept saying, no, 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 no. I think other people in this state have complained too. It's not, they serve everybody, but we still have it. So what's next for us is we're going to keep going through, and our next step is IWF is we're going to keep taking it down. We're going to take on workflows next, and we're going to make add bound and context. We've talked about adding document upload for employers. It should be pretty simple. I think this is an easy win. Trying to convince the business that it is hard. Again, it's trying to sell it. I think this would be pretty simple. I want off all Oracle. I really, really want off of Oracle. And so does the team. And now I actually had a talk with the DBAs because we were caching stuff in Oracle. They don't like it. Get this stuff out of my database. Don't cache this stuff here. And we said, okay, where are we going to put it? And so we're, oh my God, I'm over. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Move off Oracle. We're getting there. I've talked to. We're going to move some of our stuff to Postgres or something else and get it out of there. And next, also appeals, the second smallest domain, and so that'll be the next thing we go after. Or like every good cowboy movie, or you just ride off into the sunset. Job well done. I don't think so. I think we're going to saddle up and keep going. But it's been a lot of fun. Overall, it's been interesting, a lot of fun, and I am sold on the event-driven stuff, and I've been selling it to people, and I think it's catching on. So thank you very much for.
Okay, any questions? Yes.
Hi, Annie. Great
Yep.
presentation, and actually for me quite recognizable. Way smaller scale, but we did the same thing. Legacy wanted to introduce a new domain, basically to be on the safe side. But the biggest problem was, how do you keep all that knowledge of the other domains that you really can't touch out of your new system? So
Right.
how did you handle that challenge? Did you change everything in services? How did you go about it?
How do we? Make sure I understand. How do we keep all that knowledge and get it over when we did the? But basically, because the developers we worked with are so entrenched in it, they do know the stuff, and again, it is all in their heads. It is scary how much is in people's heads, and so we did a lot of testing. By breaking it down, I think a lot of it was by having small things. We were able to move small things and get it right. We did have during our test window, we found a lot of problems, things we missed, and we had to go and ask people, what's this, what's that. It's been mostly we had a lot of testing. One thing that came out of this is all these microservices we've done are very thoroughly tested now. We have automated testing on this stuff, and that's making a big difference with getting this stuff out the door. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's what we're doing. So.
I don't think we have time for another question, but there are 3 questions on the app.
I'll answer them.
So yeah,
Sure,
if you don't
sure.
mind, that's great. All right, so I think we're going to take a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back for the next talk at 10:30. All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Andy.
you.